Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road. You're bound to be back for more. Of North, on a strip of sandy soil, lies a county called.
All good? All right, we are coming back then to the public portion of the meeting, and we're going to start again with, oh, I don't have a clerk. Actually, maybe I shouldn't start just yet. Sorry. Poor Andy. Okay, so we have a clerk again. We're all ready to go. Back to the public portions. First, we are going to deal with item A, which is PW 19-07 Miles Drain Report for consideration. So the meeting was already open to the public. I guess, Mr. Miller, if you would present your report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, my name is Joel Miller. I'm with the firm K. Smart Associates, and I'm here today to present the report that I prepared under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for the Miles Drain, which is a municipal drain that's just to the west of Boston in Townsend Township. Before I get into a high-level overview of the Miles Drain and what my report recommends here, so I understand this is the first Drainage Act report that's come before this new council, and so I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes giving a high-level explanation of some of the key bits that we ought to keep in mind as we think about the Drainage Act. So statute law governing drainage in Ontario has been around for a very long time, over 175 years, And to put it simply, the Drainage Act is a piece of legislation that provides a framework for drainage schemes to be designed, to be built, and to be maintained, and for the cost related with all of that activity to be funded specifically by the community of landowners that are situated within the watershed where that drainage works occurs. Okay, so that's one of the unique aspects of the Drainage Act, is the funding piece. And again, projects constructed under the Drainage Act are commonly referred to as municipal drains. And municipal drains can be anywhere. They can be in urban areas, middle of the city of Kitchener, for example. I was involved in a project there, and in very rural areas that we are familiar with, from Fort Erie to Rainy River to Timmins to Chatham and everywhere in between. Here in Norfolk County, there's almost 1,000 kilometers of municipal drains that the Municipal Drainage Services Department looks after. And actually, almost 40% of Norfolk County's land area is situated within the watershed of a municipal drain. So there's a significant chunk of the county that experiences drainage improvement due to the presence of these municipal drains. And as I mentioned, with municipal drains, the cost for initial construction and future maintenance as it's required is borne by the users of that specific scheme, that specific drainage scheme. So that's just a brief flyover of the Drainage Act and the role drainage plays here in Norfolk County. Now dialing into the Miles Drain report that was part of your packet. The Miles Drain is an open ditch municipal drain that was first built in the early 1900s. There's a map that we may be able to pull up on the screen if there are specific questions that arise. But essentially, it's about a 2.6 kilometer ditch that outlets into Boston Creek, just to the northwest of Boston. The watershed size is about 1,500 acres. And from that initial construction in the early 1900s, it's been improved a handful of times. Last time it was worked on was in the early 90s. The primary impetus for this project, I understand there's been some discussion about the project already this afternoon, but the primary impetus, as you've discussed, was that the culvert under County Road 19 was not low enough to allow the upstream portion of the drain. So roughly half of the drain is situated upstream of County Road 19. Roughly half of the drain is downstream of the road. So the upper watershed was experiencing drainage and flooding problems due to this culvert that was too high. As well, over the years, it had essentially deteriorated near the bottom from corrosion. It was a steel pipe. And it wasn't large enough for current standards. So that was the primary impetus, but one of the other things that my report recommends is a different design grade for this ditch so that there's an improved level of conveyance for those properties that are along the route of the drain. So to make sure that that ditch functions the way it ought to, it's not just a matter of digging it deeper, but we have access culverts at periodic locations along the drain so landowners with farmland on both sides of the drain can get across the ditch. One of the things that my report does is it sets all those culverts on a uniform design grade so that there's no interruption in the flow. So again, in terms of process, under the Drainage Act, there's a requirement to engage the public and engage landowners. So we had our first on-site meeting, and all of this is detailed in the engineer's report that you have a copy of. But our first public meeting was in March of 2016 with the key landowners along the drain. Then we had an all watershed public meeting in spring of 2017. And the content of those meetings and the discussions that took place are all included in my report. We did agency consultation with Ministry of Natural Resources, with Fisheries and Oceans, and with GRCA from an environmental standpoint to make sure we incorporate any of their requirements into the design of the drain. So, continuing along, the recommendations of the report, like I said, are to clean the entirety of the ditch out, so 2.6 kilometers at an improved design grade. There's no work that's necessary in Boston Creek proper. So that's the natural water course where the drain has its outlet. And there's no work needed in Boston Creek per se. All the work is upstream of Boston Creek. Replacing these private access crossings and also replacement of the County Road 19 culvert. And as has perhaps been mentioned, but everyone who's here who lives in the watershed knows the County Road 19 culvert has already been replaced. So one of the primary drivers for the job was replaced last summer in conjunction with the County Road 19 resurfacing project. And that culvert replacement was done in coordination with my office so that we ensured it was put at the proper elevation, that it was to the specs that are part of this report. And the cost for that work under the Drainage Act is fully assessed to the county roads department in any case. So doing it in advance made sense and wasn't in any way going to put an awkward burden on the landowners in the watershed. Finally, estimated cost of the job in its entirety, engineering, construction, and allowances, is just over $300,000. The county's portion of this is just under $80,000. And about $225,000 of the cost then is assessed to the landowners in the watershed. And one thing that I'll just mention now is that the objective of today's discussion and the report being before you today is not to discuss the details of the assessments that are included in my report to the various landowners. The Drainage Act requires that decisions related to those assessments, input and appeals from landowners related to those assessments all be addressed as part of what's called the Court of Revision. So that would be a separate gathering that would occur in about a month or so after landowners have been notified for the Court of Revision. So the key topic to be sort of discussed and bantered around today is whether the drain as it's presented in my report provides the recommended improvements that are needed for the system. So in that case, that's essentially, those are the high points in terms of the cost, the work that we're planning to do. Following the customary Drainage Act appeal procedures, we would at the earliest be looking at late summer 2019 construction. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and I'm happy to answer any questions.
As well, Mr. Miller, this might be a little unorthodox, but I'm unorthodox. I was wondering if maybe you might want to come around to this side and perhaps use...
Sure.
I don't think we're that versed on drains, so maybe we could give the opportunity to the residents to ask some questions of Mr. Miller.
So I'll sit over there.
Does that work, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
Does anybody have any questions? Or, I mean, you could sit up here too if you prefer, even. I think. Oh, there's a chair coming for you. There you go. There you go.
Hi. I appreciate your report there. The one part I didn't catch, I know 19, the culvert under the road was lowered to where it should have been.
Yeah.
That part of it was corrected, but the billing of that, did I understand that billing was part of the Miles drain, or is that part of roads?
That's a good question. Can I just ask what your name is and where you...
I'm sorry, it's Kevin Miles.
Oh, okay, very good, yes. Apologize for that. The cost for the culvert replacement, whether it occurred last summer or it was going to occur this summer, was fully assessed to the roads department. So
Okay.
there's no portion of the cost to do that culvert work that is paid by any of the landowners in the watershed.
I'm sorry, the culvert is paid for the watershed?
The culvert is paid by the county roads department.
Okay, and the work, construction work for it
The pipe and the contractor cost to put it in, all of that
is roads?
is roads.
Okay,
Under the Drainage Act, it's required that cost be assessed to the road authority.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Now's your chance for questions.
Hi, my name's Shane Roholtz. I live at 447 Angling Road in Boston. I'm just asking, when was the first Boston project actually started in comparison to this one? Like, I've moved there recently, about 4 years ago. I know there was a project before moving there. I took on the responsibility of purchasing the house, but my understanding this has been going on over 10 years. Like, is there any kind of statute of limitation on how long this project can go on? Like, could it go on for another 40 years before this is resolved, or how does this actually work?
So what I can say is that our firm, and this is outlined in the report, our firm was first appointed by the county in 2012 to do this improvement report on the Miles Drain. So that's a lengthy period of time. It's also the case, you asked the question about the provided time allowance to get these reports prepared, and under the Drainage Act, it's required that that be done in 1 year. So there's a difference between 7 years and 1 year. And I think one comment I will make in that regard is that there's 20 drainage engineers covering the entire province of Ontario.
Like, I totally understand
Yep.
that this is supposed to better us and make everything better. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that, but at the same time, like, how much, I mean, no disrespect or anything, but engineering costs, like, all these costs have just gone crazy. Like, the last time I received a letter for the Angling Road one was approximately a year ago. I went to that meeting, I talked with people. We looked at having it, I believe the word is abolished or gotten rid of, sort of thing. Like, is that still an option for some of us, or like, how does that actually work? Like, most of us that were on the petition for the site of the address, which I live at currently, the old owners had come up with this proposal. I know myself, since I've lived there, I've never had any flooding. My neighbors next door both agree. Like, I would just like to see this sort of gotten rid of. Like, how long is too long to either do something or not do something? Like, I mean, no disrespect, but we're eventually paying all these engineer fees that have been 10 years long plus interest. Like, I imagine the interest is not cheap on the money that's been spent as of today.
Yeah. I'll do the best I can to just respond to your questions, and I'm going to see if I can make this pointer work. And it's a little hard to see in the map, but this, can someone scroll to page 2 on the PDF? Is that possible? And what was your first name?
Shane?
Shay. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. One, back up just one for me. Perfect. Okay. So on this map, that's part of the that shows the entire watershed for the Miles Drain. The dark squiggly line in the middle represents where the ditch is. Shay's property sits on Angling Road, and so he is within a subcatchment of the Miles Drain that is part of the area to be served by a separate municipal drain that's also in the ongoing process of having a report finalized. So that's sort of the report for which a petition was signed by the previous property owner where you live. The subject sort of before council today specifically is the Miles Drain ditch and the recommendations in this report. As it happens, because the Miles Drain is a fairly major drainage conveyance, there are other drainage works under the Drainage Act sort of in motion concurrent with the Miles Drain. So there was a staff organized a joint public information meeting for all three of these projects back in spring of 2017. So landowners could be informed of each of the three projects all in one sitting. So that's just a bit of context that I wanted to just clarify for everyone here.
So if Angling Road got done, say, a year ago when it was suggested to be done, does that affect the Miles? Or if the Miles does not get done, does it affect the angling on how the water would flow? I'm just confused because, like I said, I mean no disrespect, but we've heard 12 different stories. Like, I stand at my front door and I see, I'm not going to name any names, but a builder in our area where there is currently a watershed of, I'll say 2 feet by 100 by 150 feet on a new home that was just built. Now someone's giving this gentleman permits to allow him to build homes and drain his water to places that are not supposed to be drained or however that's working. Now when you look at the reports, this gentleman's paying very little money. I just don't understand how the average homeowner here is being penalized because someone is allowing him to keep building homes. I know in future, right across from my house and my neighbors, he has projected building 3 new homes. Where that land currently sits is flooding the neighbor's house at this time. If he builds more homes and floods it, is that something that we would say go after the city, or do we go directly after that individual for the flowing water?
My recommendation would be to speak with the drainage superintendents from the county.
I mean, no disrespect, but we have done this
Yep.
meeting after meeting after meeting, and like I said, it's been 11 years this has been going on. How
Yeah.
much more do we have to stand up here and say,
Yep.
my yard doesn't
Yep.
flood? Like we
Okay.
all said last
Yep.
meeting, we'd like to take a petition and say, no, I don't want to be involved, I do not want to be involved, and there's some that may want to be involved by all
Sure.
means. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, where does this, like this, like I said, I mean no disrespect, this is ridiculous. There's some people there that are average working people that have to pay like $20,000. There's some people paying $10,000. I don't know about you, but I just don't want to hand some guy $10,000 to say, I'm fixing a problem when currently I don't have that problem. I've never had water in my home. My neighbors have never had water in their home. So why would I endorse something that's not a problem at this time?
Yes. Those are very good questions. And I'm not going to be able to speak to every detail of them simply because this other report that you're referring to is being handled by a different engineering firm, and I'm not privy to all the latest details there. As it relates to the Miles drain, what I can say is that the proposed work in here needs to be done in any case, irregardless of the proposed angling road drain proceeds to construction or gets kiboshed. The work recommended in here, there's no special work in here proposed to accommodate the angling road drain.
Okay.
Okay? At the same time, I made sure that the design grade in the ditch that I proposed for the Miles drain would work in the case that the angling road drain does proceed to completion.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps
Some-
answer the question.
you know,
No, you've raised some good questions.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yes, my name is Dan DeMilliner, 61 Lutzville Road. How are you, Joe?
Hi.
Can you tell me how much they did lower that culvert? Do you know right offhand?
Oh, between 18 and 24 inches.
Yeah, and at one time we were discussing maybe 30 inches.
Yeah. I'd have to have a look at the drawings. Yeah, if I had to guess, it's around 24 inches probably.
Yeah, and in my case, for example, I don't see the creek down much at all, and I still got tiles that are plugged. So I don't know, is there one more culvert further down that's got to be
Yes.
lowered yet? That
Yeah.
might make, to me, if you lower the culvert 3 feet,
Yep.
my part of the creek should just go whoosh, flush it
Yeah.
all out. It hasn't done that.
Yes.
So the next one to lower, and then it'll clean, and it should be a lot better.
So that's an excellent question. And so Dan lives near the top end, the upstream end of the drain, and his question is why, now that this culvert right in the middle has been lowered, why has he not seen lowered water levels in the
Right.
vicinity of his property? And there's sort of a two-part explanation of that. The first part is that downstream of the road culvert, which has been lowered, there are other private access culverts that have not yet been lowered.
Okay.
Secondly, the entirety of the ditch has roughly 12 inches of silt accumulated in it, and so the recommendation in the report on the profile drawing shows a significant amount of material still needs to come out of the ditch, even though it was recently brushed and sort of a superficial cleaning was done. So there's a lot more material that needs to come out of the channel before you're going to see those levels drop.
And it won't be dug till next fall, is what I'm understanding?
Yeah, at the earliest, I would anticipate construction occurring late summer 2019
Okay.
due to timing windows that DFO imposes for restricting work in water.
Yeah, so what I'm really saying is I do want this cleaned out, not like the guy previous to me said it's not affecting him. I'm not saying it's not affecting him, but it is affecting me, and I do need it cleaned out or something done. All right?
All right?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions from councilors? Okay, thank you, sir. So there are some recommendations. Councilor Columbus, I think this is up to you. You mentioned earlier. I'll let you lead the charge if you like.
Madam Mayor, I was going to make the recommendation on the jaw drain.
Oh, okay, my apologies. Would anybody like to move the staff recommendations? Oh, sorry, I have to close the public meeting first. Do I have a mover? Councilor Rabbit, seconded, or Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Rabbits. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now, Councilor Geisens has moved the staff recommendations. That staff report, PW 19-07 Miles Drain 2018 report for consideration be received as information, and that a bylaw be given 2 readings, provisionally adopting the Miles Drain 2018 report dated August 3rd, 2018, prepared by K-Smart Associates Limited, and further, that the Court of Revision be scheduled in accordance with the provisions of the Draining Act, and further, that upon completion of the appeal process, the drainage superintendent be authorized to commence the process and construction of the drainage works in accordance with the Drainage Act. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Van Passen, any discussions on the motion? Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through the chair to staff, I want to ask if we could get some feedback regarding the one bidder, and I understand that there could be some information forthcoming if we were to solicit those that chose not to bid. I would like to actually get some of that information back if they were forthcoming as to, you know, what made them decide not to bid on the project, or maybe simple direction would be enough just to get some feedback on that specific topic. I didn't want to lose sight of that.
I believe that's the next one.
All right. Sorry, my apologies. We'll pencil that one for the next drain.
Okay. Further discussion? Councillor Van Passen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make the comment. Last year, I was laid up when they did a little work on my knee, and I read an old book that listed out at the turn of the 18th to the 19th century, the Townsend Township was the richest township in Upper Canada because of the agricultural base. And I don't think that has changed here in Norfolk County. The agricultural base is what drives our economy. And the standards of farming are so high, and the requirements, and one of the things they need is the drainage. And, you know, it was mentioned, we got 1,000 kilometers of municipal drains in Norfolk County. And I think we're way behind on getting them cleaned out and getting the grades to work and getting them to do what they originally were designed to do. So the quicker we can move this on, the happier I would be.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Next on the list, we're back to PW 19-09, the Henry Joel Drain Improvements.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'll take responsibility for the notice errors going out saying everybody to be here for 3 o'clock and then the public meeting portion. So I have noticed several new landowners have arrived for the 5 o'clock public meeting portion of the hearing. Again, very high end. The project was tendered. The tender price came in over 133% of the engineer's estimate in the report. Council's decision is to whether to proceed with the construction of the project or cancel the project or refer it back to the engineer, or you can't refer it back to the engineer at this stage, but we're seeking direction from council. I'll leave it in your hands.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the public if anyone has any questions that have just arrived for the Jules Drain. No one? We see some new faces came in. No questions? Okay. Any questions from council? Councilor Columbus?
Yes, Madam Mayor, can I make the motion now?
You betcha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've heard that the drain as it presently stands is undersized from our public works staff. This particular drain has been studied for 4 to 5 years, I believe, not as long as the Miles drain, but still quite some length of time. We heard earlier that there's a farmer to the south, I believe, who's looking to perhaps plant ginseng, and it's quite an expensive crop, and if we have to pay for crop damage, that could add up too. So it'd be better to have this drain done before that goes ahead as a ginseng crop. And if we re-tendered, we got one bid, but if we re-tendered, there's no guarantee that we're going to get 2 bids or 3 bids. It'd be nice if we did. And our engineering fees just keep climbing, so I would suggest that we support the recommendation, the motion that's printed on page 145 of our agenda package, and I will make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Councillor Rabbits, discussions on the motion? Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I know I raised this before, but the only bidder was a local company, very good reputation. It's done a lot of work for the county and other lines of work. And the explanation is the change in the price of the pipe is the majority of the increase. So I'm pretty confident to just deal with it and not be concerned about whether we had more than one tender. It's not like the one who did tender knew that he was going to be the only one. So.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, next one on the list is DCS 19-13. I will now open the public meeting on DCS 19-13. Shannon, is that you to present the report? Thank you. Just quickly, while they're clearing out before we move to the planning report. So with Councillor Martin's motion to, with regards to the RFAP committee, can we assume then for transparency and based on the chair, Mr. Anderson's comments, we would do away with the closed session and have the reset as discussed and involve the engineers from the RFAB committee? Or did you, I'm asking now only because we'll let Shelley and Lydia go home if we're not going to do the closed session later on this evening. Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. The only comment that I would like to make is just acknowledging that we do have councillors that are not sitting on that board and will not be privy to that conversation with RFAB. So I did want to provide an opportunity, if they so choose, to ask those questions in closed session, and I will be keeping my comments to when we're meeting in closed session with the RFAB committee, but I want to provide them an opportunity maybe to ask those questions they otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to ask.
Councillor Pacelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Rabbits. As someone a councillor who's not on that committee, I would like to ask a few questions in closed session. My anticipation would be that it wouldn't take very long, but I appreciate the opportunity just so that we have an idea of where everybody is. Thank you.
Thank you. Guess you're stuck here for a little while. Okay, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Chop. Good evening, and to rest of council and staff and public. This is a zoning amendment application that has been put forward for the property at 82 Wyndham Road to 10. The subject lands are both designated and zoned hazard land, and the requested amendment is to add a site-specific provision on the property to allow for the construction of a single detached dwelling. The zoning amendment is for a portion of the larger property, and the larger property measures about 10 acres in size. The proposal has been reviewed by the various departments and agencies, as well as has gone through consultation and permitting processes with the Long Point Region Conservation Authority. there was no concerns or objections raised by any of the circulated residents or neighboring property owners. Based on the foregoing, planning staff are recommending support of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this matter. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Rabbits?
Thank you, Mayor Chop, and through the chair. I do see that there's a proposed tile bed, and it's right at the corner of the property that could be potentially interfering with the wood lot there. I just wanted to confirm that those woods wouldn't be cut down, or if there's no encroachment concerns with this application.
Through you, Mayor Chop, to Councillor Rabbits. I know there was some discussion and review in terms of studies that were provided, and as part of the building envelope, they did look at the location as well as all the associated accessory, the tile bed, the well, any of the buildings that are going on, and they identified that this is the most appropriate location for the septic bed, so it won't have any further encroachments in terms of the wood lot that's there.
Thank you. Any further questions? One quick, just for knowing moving forward, what makes kind of an approval difference on one piece of hazard land and not on another piece of hazard land?
To you, Mayor, that is an excellent question. It's something that we have to look at on a site-by-site basis, given some of the surrounding properties that are there, the extent of the hazard that is in place. A lot of the times when we're looking at applications of this nature, it's in consultation with the applicable conservation authority, whether it be Long Point or the Grand River. And through that discussion, as well as supporting information, we would kind of look at what development is appropriate for the property.
Thanks. Any further discussion? Okay, is the applicant Richard Kinsey or Bonnie Rourke or an agent on their behalf in attendance? Would you like to speak? Anything to say, or? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just for procedural sake, I don't see anyone else here, but I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application to come forward to the podium. Okay, is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak in general or in opposition to the application? Anything further from council? Can I have a verbal motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Would someone like to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Columbus. Any debate? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Next one on the list, DCS 19-20. I will now open the public meeting on DCS 19-20, and I guess, Matt, you'll be presenting this report?
Thanks very much. So the report that's in front of you today speaks to an update to the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. This affects the entire county. Specifically, it affects section 3.21 of the zoning bylaw, which is the policy related to cannabis production and processing. Sorry, does somebody have the clicker? The mouse doesn't seem to work from this location. Okay. Well, I'll just continue. You still have the. Thanks. I'll just continue. So the report and bylaw propose that extra sensitive land uses be added to the cannabis production and processing bylaw. This report was previously presented to council earlier in December of 2018. At that time, council gave staff direction to, in addition to having those sensitive land uses, also come back with some permitted tourism uses on the cannabis production and processing facility sites. So we have looked at our zoning bylaw, in particular looked at some of the tourism uses that could be used on these sites in the future. So staff is proposing that a dwelling, a hotel, a place of assembly, and a tourist cabin be added as permitted uses on these sites, and they would be exempt from the buffer requirement. In order to do that, these are considered on-farm diversified uses. We look to our official plan policies and also to the guidelines to permitted uses in Ontario to give us direction on the size and scale of those types of uses on these sites. So the guidelines and our official plan policy stipulate specific size requirements, and that's 2% on the farm parcel up to 1 hectare. So it's very dependent on how large the farm parcel itself is. There are some reductions that can be added to that equation. So we can, those sites can take advantage of existing laneways, existing parking areas, existing buildings to accommodate some of those tourism uses. And the idea behind that is just to allow a little bit more of those uses to occur on site while trying to avoid land use conflicts in the agricultural area. Staff recommend that this bylaw amendment be approved, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Any questions? Okay, everybody knows I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, so I'm just wondering, in terms of the addition of the uses, obviously this has also gone through the Ag Board and so on, so we're seeing a tie-in with the agricultural community, and what we're trying to do here is preempt any future planning amendments and so on. So I'm just wondering, we've got dwelling, hotel, place of assembly, tourist cabin, if there's some reason why you know, a place of entertainment and a tent and trailer park would have been excluded. Hippies like to camp. So just to me, that seems like kind of a logical one to throw in there.
So through the mayor to the mayor. The tourist cabin use would include things like glamping and camping and that sort of thing. Including something like a trailer park would be a very intensive use on a site like that, and it would be really hard to control the size and scale of it. So the tourist cabin use addresses that use that you're specifically mentioning.
So we're saying that if somebody wanted to have some kind of event with straight up regular old tents, that would fall within tourist cabin, or no?
Yeah, that is correct. So they would be permitted to have those tourist cabins, and the place of assembly would enable them to have those events.
So what's the difference between place of assembly and place of entertainment?
I'd have to just double check the definition. If you give me a minute, I can do that for you. Thank goodness for technology.
I don't know, Matt, in terms of multitasking, but with the tent and trailer part as well, like I understand that's maybe more of a significant use, but your property would still also have to be zoned for the tent and trailer. Like by doing this, we're not saying you're automatically being granted this zoning for a tent and trailer park, right?
By doing this, we are saying you're automatically zoned for a tourist cabin or cabins.
Okay.
Yeah. So a place of assembly shall mean a building or part of a building used for meetings, banquets, and assembly, which may include an auditorium, assembly hall, or banquet hall. Place of entertainment shall mean a building or part of a building wherein facilities are provided for entertainment or amusement, which may include, without limitation, a pool hall, bowling alley, arcade, theater, a music or dance hall, or other cultural activity. So it just a place of entertainment just ups the ante in terms of intensity and use.
Okay. Okay, the next one I have, as long as, again, the tents fall into the tourist cabin, I'm fine with that piece. The next one I have, though, is below where the hotel, place of assembly, tourist cabin combination thereof shall be limited to. While I appreciate the intention of the up to 2% of a farm parcel is to preserve agricultural land, it's also a little bit in conflict, and I don't find that equitable between one LP that's going to move to do something like this and another. If one LP has 30 acres and they only get 2% of that 30, but another LP happens to have put it on a farm that's 500 acres, they have far greater opportunity when the overall component is likely to be the same size. Do you know what I mean? If they're going to do tents in a place of assembly, it's going to be the same size really, whether it wasn't that LP that was on a 30-acre property versus the LP that was on a 100-acre property. So myself personally, I find that including the up to 2% of a farm parcel to a maximum of 1 hectare, that is really creating an inequity across LPs that might want to look to doing something like this in the future. And I don't think that they're going to be the same size regardless. So, but we're limiting one person. Maybe theirs is only on 10 acres, and now they can't do it because 2% of the 10 isn't going to be enough. But are they really going to farm the other 4 acres? Do you know what I mean? They've got a couple acres for the LP. They've got 4 acres of extra. They've got a couple acres for the tent. So that to me doesn't make sense. You might as well let them use the whole 10 acres if they need to.
Yeah, just to address that question. So these policies, that the 2% and the discount policies, they come right out of our official plan and relate specifically to on-farm diversified use, which were, and the official plan policies were basically taken word for word out of the guidelines to permitted uses in Ontario. This is the policy the province has given us as a tool in order to promote tourism, in order to promote economic development activity in our agricultural area. And it's a tough one because in one sense you want to be able to promote that economic development activity, in the other sense we want to be able to protect farmland, and we want to be able to protect surrounding agricultural operations from these uses. So the intent of limiting the size and scale of these specific types of uses is to avoid land use conflicts in the future. What that means for cannabis producers or processors is that if they wish to participate and have these types of uses on site to a size and scale that would be usable for them, they should be looking for larger properties. The larger properties help to mitigate buffering distances, and this would also be something that would be under site plan control as well. This would help us maintain those buffers, the landscaping. Yeah, it basically all comes down to land use conflict and our ability to mitigate land use conflict, and that's why those policies were created in the first place.
Well, myself, I'd rather see the guy with a 5-acre or 10-acre LP be moving to do something like this because he's not going to be farming that land anyway, and having the bigger guys do something less. But Councilor Van Hassen.
I think I've been following this since 10 years ago with the Ag Advisory Board about this. That 2% number has been there for a long time. And from what I understand, that's sort of, if you keep within that window, you can just do it as a right. You go get your building permit and you start doing it. If you want to go beyond that, you can still come back to planning staff and go through the zoning amendment to increase that space a little bit. So somebody on the smaller parcel, it's not that they can't do it, they just have to make that one more step. So, we're stuck sort of what the province says we can and can't do, but there is another opportunity for the smaller landowner to go beyond that.
I understand, but I mean, we're trying to also reduce potential future bureaucracy and so on, and the official plan is not meant to regulate land use. That's been stated over and over and over again. So That's my concern with that, is we're creating more levels of red tape here of saying, okay, well, if you've got the 10-acre parcel, well, then you can come back here, but the guy with the 100-acre parcel, he doesn't need to come back, It seems unnecessary to me. Along the same lines of, the fact that we have a line in here requiring the project to go through site plan control. To be very clear, it is the Ontario Planning Act and the Ontario Legislature that regulates site plan control. It is not up to the county on how to do that. The definition is clear, and if a project falls within site plan control because it meets the definition of development, as in it's a new building, then of course it is subject to it because the overriding legislation is there that demands it. If it is not, then it should not be included separately as an automatic thing, because it is not Norfolk County's right to include that as an automatic provision for site plan control. So most of these LPs we know are going to be a brand new building, so they automatically trigger it. However, if they're not, if it was a renovation of, I don't know, an old horse arena or whatever, there may be reasons that it wouldn't necessarily be triggered. Then you could argue the increase in usability and so on. So in all likelihood, it still would be triggered under another provision. But I just think that we have to be very careful when we're writing bylaws now. We've made a commitment to reducing red tape here in the municipality. And I don't think that we need those words in there. The official plan, if that's what our official plan states or so on, those would be the provisions that would cover it. The Ontario Planning Act, just because we have this bylaw, is still the overriding piece of legislation here, not Norfolk County's bylaw. So I just think the province is trying to streamline, and we also need to streamline. And the province takes precedence here. So if it's something that meets the definition of site plan control, then of course it happens, regardless of whether or not it's stated in our bylaw. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yes. Just to clarify site plan control, so the Planning Act under Section 41 enables municipalities to use site plan control. However, it's our discretion when and where we use it. Currently, Section 3.21 requires that cannabis production and processing facilities are under site plan control. So whenever we build a new building or we retrofit a new building or an existing building, site plan control is automatically triggered. So for instance, if there is an existing greenhouse and an applicant would like to convert that greenhouse from tomatoes to cannabis, site plan control kicks in. And it kicks in for a very specific reason. It kicks in because the use has significantly changed. It was gone from tomatoes to something that has a very large impact on its surrounding uses, such as odor, such as light. Light was always there with the tomatoes, so it's more of the odor issue, more so than anything else. So these sites are automatically under site plan control because of Section 3.21 of our zoning bylaw. What that trickles into then is for any of these on-farm diversified uses, they'll also be subject to site plan control because they're on the same site as these cannabis production and processing facilities. In the future, staff is looking at bringing a zoning bylaw amendment to council to make on-farm diversified uses a permitted use as of right in the agricultural area. Because of the guidelines, because of our official plan policies, we'll be looking at echoing a lot of the sort of structure and framework that we're providing to council tonight. So the 2% will be something that'll be included in that. The discounts will be something that we include in that, and also the site plan control aspect of it is something, again, we'll be presenting to council as for it to be included. And again, it comes down to mitigating land use conflicts between agricultural uses and non-agricultural uses. And those non-agricultural uses, they're good, but they have the ability to disrupt agricultural operations, and we can help to mitigate that through site plan control.
Okay. So site plan control allows a municipality to designate all or part of a region as falling under site plan control. It does not give a municipality the power to say that this particular type of construction is subject to site plan control. So the bylaw from 3.21 may or may not be in contravention of the law, depending upon the surrounding circumstances. However, I will agree with you that by changing a tomato greenhouse to a cannabis production, arguably you could say is substantially increasing the usability because you are